Hi everyone, and welcome to our another Get Clued Up station. I'm myself, Rabbi, your Vice President Education and the Deputy President at London South Bank University. And today's Get Clued Up session is about changing landscape for queer communities, and which will be presented by one of your favorite, all of our favorite person who is our events and involvement coordinator, Jim Waller. And I would like to invite Jim Waller to join. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. It is nice to see, how our creative sessions are going on. And today we have got such a amazing topic to talk about, and we all are looking forward to hear from you, your experience and everything. So stage is yours.
Thanks very much, Rabbi. Hi everyone. So this is Get Clued Up on the changing landscape for queer communities. I'm mostly going to be talking a little bit about factual stuff, but also a little bit about based on my own experience as a gay man. So we'll get the factual stuff out of the way. It is literally just looking at my face though, because there is no presentation. So do bear with that. I'm going to talk a little bit about homosexuality, lesbianism, transgender as well, and lots of other things that are linked towards the queer community. Let's start with the facts, as I've said. So in 1533, that is actually when it became illegal for men to have anal intercourse. And this was due to the Buggery Act, which is a very odd name for an act, and that was signed into English law. The penalty for buggery was death. It's quite an extreme penalty, in my opinion. That was 1533. Henry VIII was the monarch then. 1835, so some time later, James Pratt and John Smith were the last men in Britain to be executed for homosexual acts. But then it wasn't until 1861 when the Offences Against the Person Act downgraded the punishment for buggery to life imprisonment in England and Wales. Scotland were a little bit slower. They changed their punishment in 1889. 1885, so a few more years later, due to the Criminal Law Amendment Act, the age of consent for heterosexuals was raised to 16, but at the same time, all sex acts between men were criminalised. 1921, so skipping quite a while, female homosexuality was discussed in Parliament for the first time, as it had never previously been made illegal. The House of Commons and the House of Lords both rejected any amendments to criminalise lesbianism, should doing so encourage women to explore homosexuality. So sex between two consenting females has never been illegal. 1957. Never been illegal, but been frowned upon, obviously. Just saying that because women then were always thought of as the male's property, the father's property to begin with, and then her husband's property. So to imagine a woman would be independent or would want to search for a life outside of marriage or outside of being a daughter or a wife was unheard of for the males to understand. So ridiculous if we look back on that today. Anyway, moving on. 1957, the Wolfenden Report stated that homosexual acts between consenting men over the age of legal majority, which was 21, should not be a matter for the law. It took 10 years then for the Sexual Offences Act to decriminalise homosexual acts. So that was 1967. So 1967, homosexual acts between consenting men over the age of 21 in England and Wales were no longer illegal. It took Scotland another 13 years. 1980, Scotland decriminalised homosexuality, and Northern Ireland another 2 years. So we're actually now within time that will be remembered by your parents or grandparents. 1972 now, London's first Pride Parade saw upwards of 2,000 men and women march. Go to 1988. To put this into perspective, in 1988, I was 11 years old. So I was still old enough. I was old enough to understand what was going on in the world. 1988, the Section 28 Amendment to the Local Government Act banned state schools from teaching or promoting the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. So that's why schools didn't teach about homosexuality. 1994, You will remember I said that in 1967 it was okay for men over the age of 21 to join in homosexual acts. Well, it took till 1994 for that age to be lowered, but it was only lowered to 18, so it was not equal to that for heterosexual couples who were able to have sex at the age of 16. Another 6 years until 2000, so only this century did age of consent equality finally happen, with another lowering of the age of consent for gay men to 16. 2003, so only we're in 2021 now, aren't we? So that's that. 16 years ago, Section 28 was repealed in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, English, Welsh, and Northern Irish law. This had already happened in Scotland in 2000, the first time that they were ahead of the curve. In 2004, the Civil Partnership Act gave same-sex unions the same rights as straight married couples, so gay men and women, and also transgender couples and couples where one was transgender and one wasn't, were finally able to have legal rights in the UK. 2005, the Gender Recognition Act 2004 came into effect, giving trans people full legal recognition of their gender, allowing them to finally acquire a new birth certificate. This was a huge, huge game changer. 2005, again, it was no longer necessary to be married to apply for adoption, opening it up to same-sex couples and single people in England and Wales. Scotland didn't adopt a similar legislation until 2009, and Northern Ireland only in 2013. 2009, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act came into law, allowing lesbians and their partner equal access to legal presumptions of parentage in IVF or assisted self-insemination cases. So they can basically have parent on the child's birth certificate, both mothers, basically. 2010. So really only 10 years ago, 11 years ago, like coming up, the Equality Act gave LGBT employees protections from discrimination, harassment, and victimization at work. And then 2014, one of the most recent things that's happened, only 6-7 years ago, marriage law was finally updated to recognize same-sex marriage with the Marriage Act, Same-Sex Couples Act 2013, coming into law in England and Wales. Scotland followed suit that same year, but it has only been legal for same-sex couples to marry in Northern Ireland for 1 year and 1 month, when the law was changed in January 2020. So that's some of the facts surrounding queer communities. Obviously, I've not spoken about laws for bisexuality because they would have come under homosexuality, wouldn't really be recognised as a separate thing when it comes to the law. So if you were a bisexual man and you participated in homosexual acts, regardless of the fact that you were also attracted to women, it doesn't matter. And I think it's almost a fact. And a lot of the laws and things like that were brought into being because it was all about sexual acts. It wasn't about the love and the feelings that people had. And I think that now we're going away from that. It is more about how the people's emotions. So that's where we're going, and hopefully that will continue. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things from my youth that I remember growing up as a gay man in the 90s and the 2000s. So first of all, I'm going to go back to the 80s and talk about some of the things that made a difference, I guess. So you'll always hear stuff about representation and how groups are not represented, underrepresented groups, in fact, as we're called. So 1986 to 1989, one of the biggest things that happened in British television was the arrival of Colin in EastEnders. Colin was the first gay character in a soap opera, and he later got a boyfriend called Barry. At one point in their relationship, Colin gave Barry a kiss on the forehead, and at that time that brought in a record number of complaints to the BBC. Later on, Barry had gone, left, no longer part of the story, and Colin met someone else called Guido, and they had the first gay kiss on the lips on British television in a soap opera, and that caused uproar again. It was just silly. The newspapers were printing it on their front pages. There were quotes about how awful it was and all sorts of things. It was not taken well by the majority. We've clearly come a long way since then, thankfully. 1989 to 1994, there was a Channel 4 television show called Out on Tuesday, later changed to just Out when the day it was on changed. That was a late night show. The only way that gay people could find representation or find even just a lifestyle TV show about themselves was after the watershed. No representation before the watershed, apart from in something like EastEnders. 1990, Orange is Not the Only Fruit was released on television. It was like 3 episodes, and that was a groundbreaking television show about a young woman who was brought up in quite a strict religious background, who came to the realization, came to terms that she was a lesbian, and it's definitely, if you can find it, worth a watch. 1993 to 1995, we saw the first ever pre-watershed lesbian kiss on British television. There had been a kiss between 2 characters on LA Law, but this would be the first one before 9 o'clock, and that was between a character called Beth Jordash and another character whose name I forgot to look up on the soap opera Brookside. And like, I mean, if you ask your parents about it, they'll definitely have heard of Beth Jordash and the first lesbian kiss on British television. 1995 to 1999, we then had Gaytime TV, and despite the title being a play on daytime TV, this was a late night show, and it was presented by Richard Fairbrass and Rona Cameron, so a bisexual man and a lesbian woman, and that was very much a little bit tongue-in-cheek but quite fun. 1998 to 2004, the character of Hayley Cropper was in Coronation Street, and she was a transgender woman, but the character was played by a cisgendered actress. So whilst it was very forward-thinking at the time, it's still, looking back at it, you'd think, no, that's not great, because whilst the representation is there, it's being represented like by somebody who hasn't had that experience. So thankfully for that, things have changed a lot. 1999, we saw Queer as Folk, and that was one of the first major TV shows about gay people in the United Kingdom, written by Russell T Davies, who you mostly all know wrote the recent television hit It's a Sin, and that just changed the way that gay people were represented, really. I mean, 1999 as a 20-something-year-old that I think that was revolutionary. I couldn't believe it. It was just one of the best shows that I'd ever seen, and the best way that we were represented. But again, all 3 of the characters were gay men. No, main characters were gay men, but they were played by straight men. So it's become, why are we being represented by people who don't have that shared experience? I also want to talk a little bit about 2011 Channel 4 show. It doesn't have the best title, and looking back on it now, the title would be completely different. But it was called My Transsexual Summer. Obviously, it's a very outdated title. It's from 2011, and it was a really interesting, almost reality TV show in which 7 transgendered people came together like every weekend over a summer, living in a house, and it was one of the first introductions the UK society community had to transgender people, and what they go through, the different nuances within the transgender community themselves. It's a really important show. So I just wanted to mention that as well. As we're talking about changing landscapes, I just wanted to talk about a few other more mundane things that you don't really think about. So, for example, if you're a member of the LGBT plus society and community, you may buy Gay Times or Attitude, 2 magazines we may subscribe to their website, the two magazines, been going for years. Now, as a young gay man, I remember going to buy these magazines and being incredibly, almost ashamed to buy them because they were on the top shelf. In your local newsagents, in WH Smith's. They were not with other lifestyle magazines, even though they were. They were just the same as Cosmopolitan and Vogue. They were lifestyle and fashion magazines, but they're up on the top shelf. And other things that are up on the top shelf are pornography. So when you're going in as a young man to buy these magazines to see what's going on in the world, in your specific community, you have to go to the top shelf. It was incredibly hard to do such a thing. So it's these little nuances that have changed and aren't the same now. The last time I bought a Student Gay Times, which was quite a while ago, it was like 2019, I went into the shop that I bought them from, and it was there, front center, wasn't hidden, and I didn't have any shame in buying it. Other things talk about are things like Hanky Code and Polari. So these were ways that gay men communicated with each other, and Hanky Code was based on what you were wearing in your pocket. I think that's very, very American, I believe. But Polari was just another way of talking. It was like a coded language that gay men used to communicate, and so that they knew who they were talking to, because obviously it was illegal to be who they were. So how did we meet each other back in the 90s and possibly the 80s as well? I'm not quite that old to know the 80s. So obviously there are LGBTQ plus venues, but when you're living in a smaller town, they're very rare. It still are now, but certainly so back then. So we didn't have the internet and things like that. So we had telephone chat rooms. But these were premium rate numbers, so they're 08 numbers, and you would phone up and you would be able to leave a message about who you were. Other people could hear the message and they could decide if they wanted to give you a message back, so you'd be messaging backwards and forwards. So it'd be like a delayed chat. So they were a precursor to internet chat rooms, basically. But it was all done by voice, and it was very, very expensive. But when you're in a small town or in an area where it's not so easy to find other people like yourself, you do what you have to do. But again, really expensive phone calls to make. So if you're not paying your phone bill and you're at home, it makes it even more difficult. How do you find people that you can even just be friends with who are the same as you? So the internet and chat rooms made such a difference to the community. Across the board, from not just gay men, lesbians, transgender people. It became a new community, an online community. You were able to find people who had the same feelings as you, not necessarily even in the same country. Don't ever underestimate the power that had back then. Obviously now the internet and apps are still there, but they've become a bit more of a minefield. Everything's a lot more open, I think, which is great, but also it opens us up to abuse and things. So it's a bit of a seesaw. One side of it is really positive and absolutely great. We've got these ways to communicate and find each other. But on the other side, there's also the dangers and the pitfalls that come with being out there. So coming to the end now. So I just wanted to talk about a few things. If you're interested in seeing or learning a bit more about the changing landscapes and you just want to watch some stuff, then some things to watch. You've got The Naked Civil Servant from 1975. This is about the life story of Quentin Crisp, based on his book The Naked Civil Servant, which you could read, but also watching the movie brings home the trials that people would face. 1990, Orange Is Not the Only Fruit, I've already mentioned. That's an incredibly interesting watch. Again, that's based on a book. As I say, that's about a young woman who just discovers her sexuality as a lesbian, although she'd been brought up in a very strict religious background. 1999 to 2000, the two series of British Queer as Folk, because all of this is about Britain. As a actually groundbreaking, complete revelation for those of us who will remember it when it was first on. If you thought It's a Sin was groundbreaking, go and watch Queer as Folk. Tipping the Velvet, 2002, is about lesbianism. It's about lesbians it's a period drama. I don't actually know the dates it was set in, but it's actually a really interesting watch to see, what type of things, because again, it's based on a book, but what type of things people would get up to find other people like them. Disclosure is a documentary, and it's not British. It's about American television and representation of transgender people. But I think it's a really important thing to watch. And finally, from this year, It's a Sin. It's definitely worth a watch. And it's not just about the AIDS epidemic. I mean, it is about the AIDS epidemic, but it's also about how life was in the 80s. I've not really spoken much about the AIDS epidemic or that because I was not very old. I was, like as I said, I was 11 in 88. I clearly remember the very famous advert with the big, AIDS in stone and it falling over. I remember that was like something that it was there. And I did know I was a gay man at the age of 11. I fancied boys at the age of 11. So I knew that, that was there in my future possibly. But thankfully, things moved on. Safe sex became a lot more prominent in the community. So, that's why I've been very lucky. So moving on from there, we still have a long way to go for queer communities to feel 100% safe, and that's what it is, and it to be more about their emotions than about their physical acts or their physical appearance. So that's not everything. That's not the be all and end all of anyone, their physical appearance. There's so much more inside of us than there is on the outside of us. And for me, I think that one thing that needs to happen is we need to break the cycle of learned behaviors. A lot of the unacceptance that we face is based on the learned behaviors of people from their parents or their previous generations. And that's a cycle that is really something that I personally feel we need to move on from. So I've spoken quite a bit at length there. Coming towards the end of everything that I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions or you just wanted to chat, you can email the SU, hello@southbank.su is our email address. And if you have any concerns about that sort of thing, we will be running later this week some Instagram stories with contact details for different charities, etc. as well. But for now, that's it for me. So I shall bring Rabbi back.
Wow, Jim, what a great session, and it was really informative. I was just listening and thinking, how you do remember all those dates, all those the months and everything. It is really informative, man. And honestly speaking, from my perspective, if I say it is, as a human being, we all have to respect each other, and we all have to make sure that we don't make other people uncomfortable in their zone or whatever, however they are. We are, as a human being, we have to be kind. Doesn't matter what is our ethnicity, what is our society, what is our community, what is our background, what is our religion, what is our our sexuality or anything. So we all have to be respectful to each other. That's how I think we can bring a vibrant society, and we can stay together. We can build a very great society among bringing all the communities together. And so I would say, Jim, it was really amazing, and I would like to say thank you very much for your time today and just giving us all this information, and also from the student union side, arranging all those events, amazing events. Students are very love to see all these events. And so before we end today, I would just love to tell you guys and inform you guys our coming week Get Clued Up station about our coming week Get Clued Up station. So on 3rd of March, our next Clued Up station will be on 3rd of March about budgeting with John Thompson from Christian Against Poverty. So I'm very much looking forward to see you guys all on 3rd of March about budgeting with Tom Thompson. He will be from Christian. He will be from Christian Against Poverty charity. So yeah, very much looking forward to see you guys all. That's all. As I can see, there is no questions here, so I think we can end our today's session.
Thanks, Rabbi.
What a lovely session. Thank you, Jim. Lovely to see you. Take care. Bye.